All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players Podcast. Tonight, we are joined by a super special guest, just listing off some of his accolades and records: 2 Supporter Shield trophies, a U.S. Open Cup, a Goalkeeper of the Year award, and quite frankly, one of this host's inspiration to continue as a goalkeeper from age 10 up through college. Featured for the Crew, the Fire, the Quakes, capped by the men's national team. We're joined by Jon Busch today. Bushy, how you doing?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. How we doing?
We are doing. Super excited to have you. Thanks so much for being here. We got a ton of stuff to talk about, and I can't wait to dig into it because just your experience in general. I can't wait to, just as a goalkeeper and a soccer fan myself.
I'm excited. Love talking goalkeeping, love talking football. So let's do it.
Love it. Before we do any of that, we always dive into a scarf of the week. I know you said you didn't have any yet, but Connor, you got anything to celebrate today?
Of course. Unlike Andrew here, I actually support our guests when they come on. So I brought out the Columbus Crew scarf. Their 2020 champions one.
All right.
So I have a closet full of 45 different soccer scarves.
Oh, wow.
Not a single one from the Crew, the Fire, or the Quakes.
Stop it. Seriously?
Not one. It's ridiculous.
How is that possible?
A lot of them are from Red Bull. That's my team. A lot of them come from overseas. I do a mystery scarf from awaydays.com. They give you 2 random scarves for like $30. It's a great deal. Love them. Last episode, we interviewed Patrick from Montreal, and I brought out a Toronto scarf. He didn't like that very much. So instead of going with something close, I went with something completely out of the blue. And I don't think this will have anything to do, but it's FC Copenhagen. Just completely, there's no way anybody can get upset or angry because that's
purely neutral.
Yeah, it's purely neutral. It's a nice looking scarf. I was gonna go with something like Nashville, I pull Nashville out a lot. It's a cool looking one, but Copenhagen hasn't gotten out of the closet yet, so we'll break it out for today. Speaking of today, we did want to talk just a little bit about your path through your professional career, and really more specifically how you kept yourself motivated through some of the low points in your career, and then really at the end of it, how you transitioned into this coaching role. Myself, I am a coach I was a coach until I'm moving, but at a U13 level, at a very low competitive U13 level. And I also did goalkeepers for 2 years, and I'll actually probably end up doing that at college when I go back for my graduate assistant role next year. So I kind of wanted to see how you transitioned to that, what led you to that, things like that. That's more of a personal thing for me, but it just really the main focus of the episode today is going to be, I'm going to title it Tenacity, right? How you can get yourself from a low point and push yourself through those low points all the way through to being a men's national team goalkeeper and a goalkeeper of the year in MLS. So unless Connor or Bush, you got anything else to add before we really dive into it?
No, let's get going.
All right. So let's start at the beginning, right? So you come out of high school, you're one of the most promising goalkeepers in the nation. Go over to UNC Charlotte, 3 seasons, first ever college cup, 19 wins, 12 shutouts, defensive player of the year, a great goals against average, first team all conference, all these accolades. You get your team deep in the NCAA tournament in 2 out of your 3 years, and you're undrafted out of college. What? So a few questions just driving into that.
Yep.
What was MLS draft like in '97?
Well, if I may, I want to start a little bit earlier than that. Earlier than that, but and I've told this story many times on different podcasts where, so there was a goalkeeper coach at UNCC. I was very fortunate, very lucky. His name's Eric Vaughter. Everybody calls him EV. He actually just retired from coaching in May. He's 65 now, so he's done like 40 some years of goalkeeping coaching. But I was very fortunate. He had just gotten to Charlotte when I went there. At the end of my freshman year, when we went into training, like in the off seasons, all of a sudden these USL goalkeepers started coming around and training, for getting ready for their preseason. And that's kind of like when the whole pro idea started. It was in my head from years ago with the youth national teams, but that was only because, you know, we went to Europe so often and you saw those environments. You know, there wasn't much in the States at that point to really, you know, look at and watch. But these guys all came down to train with EV because he was the best in the States. So that first off season down at Charlotte, you know, we had guys like Mike McGinty, Jeff Duback, Aiden Haney. And if you look up these guys, like they were big time goalkeepers, you know, and you know, the young kids now probably never heard of them, but they're coming into Charlotte 3-4 nights a week to train with EV. So I'm around them all winter and some of the spring. And so after that kind of time at the end of the spring, you know, Evie and I had a little chat and I just said, look, I said, I don't know if I'll ever be good enough, but if I am, I want to do what they do. And obviously you're the guy with the blueprint. So you tell me when and where and what to do. And, you know, I'll follow your lead. And, you know, it kind of started there. We really didn't talk about it that much. But I kind of threw it out there to him. And, you know, so went through my sophomore year and again, didn't talk about it. And then, you know, kind of end of the season, just kind of mentioned to him and he's like, you need one more year. I'm like, all right, cool. No problem. Again, EB's like my second father, you know, we still talk, you know, many times a week at this point, you know, how many ever years later, I feel like 100, but he's the guy I go to for everything on and off the field, you know? So I said, okay, no problem. You know, we keep working. And so we go into my junior year and again, we haven't even talked about it. We're just focusing on the college season. And it's kind of a cool story to tell now so we're at the Final Four. And back then, again, 100 years ago, probably before you two were even born, they had TV timeouts during the Final Four games, like roughly around 22 minutes in each half, right? So, you know, it's the middle of the second half. We're losing, I don't even know, 3-1, 4-1, whatever it was. And I remember coming over to EV and just being like, what can I do? What am I supposed to do? How do we fix this? Whatever. And he's just like, he just looked at me, he goes, and back then they called me JB. Nobody called me Bushy back then. Everybody called me JB. And he's like, JB, he said, just enjoy your last 22 minutes of college soccer. And I kind of looked at him and then I realized, oh shit. I looked around to see if anybody heard him, you know, and lucky nobody heard him. They were all talking. I'm like, and that's all he ever said. And I remember like, I just kind of looked at him, he goes, yeah. I said, yeah. He goes, yep. And I remember walking back to the goal, you know, with my water bottle and just thinking, wow, he thinks I'm ready. And like, it was the coolest feeling. Now we lost the game and we were done, but it was the coolest feeling. My mom had driven down from upstate New York at the time. So we went to dinner, me, her, Evie and Evie's wife, Marcia. We went to dinner that night and told my mom kind of the game plan and said, look, tomorrow when we go back to Charlotte, I'm going to talk to the coaches. I'm going to tell the boys. And then a couple of days later, I was driving home back upstate for Christmas. And so that's what happened. And mom was great. She was so supportive. She's like, that's what you want to do, go for it. So literally the next morning we got in the bus, went back down to Charlotte. As we're getting off the bus, I asked the boys to stay in the locker room. I went into Coach Tart. It was John Tart at the time. I went into his office. I said, can I speak with you, you and your staff? And I just told him, I was like, you know what, it's time. And they were great. Like they said, we had a feeling and they all said, look, we support you 100%. You're ready to go. I went into the locker room, told the boys were fantastic with it. And that was kind of the end of it. 2 days later, whatever it was, I drove upstate to New York and spent Christmas up there.
That is, so I laugh because I've got nowhere near the ending part of that, but the guy I'm going to work with back at Alfred is just like you say with EV. He's my second dad, right? Yeah. I talk to him 3-4 times a week. He's guided me through every part of my coaching journey so far. I'm at my D license right now, working my way up. And again, I talk to him 3-4 times a week, and the same deal, right? You look at him, you just trust him. You trust you. If he tells you you're not ready, you're not ready.
Yeah. No, everybody needs somebody like that in their life, regardless of their profession, regardless of what they're doing. So to get to your original question, now that I just went every other direction.
Love it.
So we go to the combine back then. And I mean, it was down in Florida somewhere. I don't even remember where it was. There was really no draft. I mean, it was a conference room in a hotel with chairs sitting around. There's probably 50, 75, 100 players. I don't even know. And, a little podium up top, and the guy's just speaking into the microphone like, yeah, Tampa Bay selects whoever, right?
Right.
But that honestly, I was more there for the experience because, again, EB had the blueprint, and he had told me before, he's like, I actually don't want you to get drafted into MLS. And I was like, why not? That's what I want. And he's like, no. He said, I need you to play in the USL for a couple of years. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, look, and again, he used a hockey reference, right? In hockey, when you're not ready, you go into the minor leagues, right? And you work your way up, same as baseball, like, Derek Jeter did it for the Yankees, all those guys, right? So he said, I need you to play games. You're a kid. He goes, you go to the MLS, you sit a year, 2, 3 years, you never play, you're going to be done. So he knew the guys, the people at Greensboro Dynamo at that time, and they were a very good organization. And so he talked to them. I ended up signing with them my first year. And, his biggest thing was, for the next few years, I don't care where you play I think it was actually the USISL at that time. But he's like, you need to play as many games as you can. So when you do get that call to the MLS, you're ready. Because if you go and you sit for a couple of years, you're not getting the experience. And at first I didn't, I didn't understand it. I mean, I was 19 years old. All I'm thinking is I want to go to the MLS. I want to get the highest level. And, so I go to Greensboro, and at that time there were 2 MLS guys kind of going up and back. So Aiden Heaney, who actually went to Charlotte prior to me, he just finished, I think, a 2 or 3 year stint at New England. So he had just come back down. Scotty Garlick was starting his time with DC United. So he was going up and back. So in front of me, I had 2, very seasoned goalkeepers, and both of them were very nice to me, great people. I still talk to both of them to this day. But I remember early in the season, being in the weight room afterwards, one afternoon, and Scotty came in, and, he was like, Bushy, you okay? You seemed a bit annoyed today at training. And I just, again, remember talking to him saying, Scotty, I want to get to the MLS. I want to, I want it so bad, and he just kind of put his arm around me, and he said, look, he goes, it's not how quickly you get to the top of the mountain. It's how long you stay at the top of the mountain when you get there. And I never thought about it that way. I never crossed my mind, right, until Scotty said it that day. And I remember leaving the gym and driving home and thinking to myself, wow, he's right. And that just those 2 or 3 minutes talking to Scotty really changed my thought process of like, okay, you got to have patience. You got to keep grinding. You got to keep grafting. You got to keep working on your game. And again, if you're good enough, somebody will find you, somebody will give you a chance. And that's what I did. After that, it was always in the back of my mind, but I never worried about it. I never focused on it like I did prior to talking to Scotty. So to be honest, like was I disappointed I wasn't drafted right away? Right. Because again, back then you think you know everything about everything and you think you're the king of the world. And I was probably pissed off and annoyed, but I'm actually glad that I wasn't, once I kind of started realizing like what the proper path for me was. And again, if I had gotten drafted in the MLS, most likely I would not have had a long career like I did. You know, I needed to take the path I did, you know, to have the success that I did.
Yeah, that is, and again, we're talking here. I'm now, every time you talk, I've now put it into what I'm going to be doing at Alfred. And I keep trying to tell these kids the same thing is, you know, I didn't play a lot. I was hurt to the back end of my career over there, but my job was locker room. We had a very bad locker room when I got there. My job was to fix it. And it was a lot of freshmen thinking that it's just Alfred. I should be playing every minute of every day. And I had to convince them the same thing. You have to be patient. You have to get your games in when you get them. And you have to be okay with the next day not being the guy, right? You have to just get your experience, work through it, because it's not high school. It's not college, or it's not college to MLS. It's that big jump, that big gap that it takes a while for a kid to understand. And that's why I keep thinking about, I mean, you probably see me smiling this whole time because I'm linking it all together here. Yeah, that's so funny how from the high school to the college to USL to MLS, there's always that gap that you need to be able to bridge before you can really cut it, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and that's all here. That's all tenacity. It's all mental strength, right? That's all. You have to be able to convince yourself that this is the right path.
Yeah. Again, when you're that young, you don't see the picture, right? You just see the here and now. And you know, as the saying goes, when you're young, you think you know everything about everything. As you get older, I realized I didn't know shit about shit.
I didn't know anything.
Yeah. I'm like, man, I didn't know anything back then. I thought I knew everything. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Coach Blake, the guy I'm going to be working for, I'm going to send this to him, make him watch it. He's going to love this. He has this great saying that I used with my 12-year-olds, 3 months ago. You have to know enough to know that you don't know anything.
Yeah.
You have to be smart enough to know that you don't know as much as you think you know, and to be open-minded and learn things. Yeah. And that goes obviously for everywhere, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So you don't get called in. You go to this A League, and you did hit the nail on the head. Both of us born 1997, so a little bit before our time. just a touch. Just a touch. But you bounce around. You're a few teams, right? And you land in Hershey. 13 shutouts, 14 wins, goalkeeper of the year, first team goalkeeper, right? At this point, is this when you start hearing maybe MLS teams are looking at me?
So starting in my second year, when I went to Virginia Beach, I spent 3 years there. And then I went to Hershey. So starting in that time, I started getting calls up to the MLS. And so back then, it wasn't like it is now. Back then, it was a straight 18-man roster on every team, and there was only 2 goalkeepers. So, for instance, I got a lot of calls up to DC and Chicago. So if somebody got injured, right, I would go up on a Thursday, train on Friday with the team, sit the bench Saturday, go back down to wherever I was Sunday. So I did that quite a bit, and I started getting invited into preseasons and spending more time with them. So that was the time when that kind of started rolling during that 3-year period where I started thinking, okay, there's something here. I might have an opportunity. I might have a chance down the road. I keep working because I keep getting called. I did, again, DC and Chicago were the 2 teams that called the most. But I did Tampa Bay, I did Colorado, I did Dallas. I'm trying to remember, who else? I got jerseys packed away from just these times where I would literally go sit, make like $250, eat a couple Snicker bars on the bench, and then go home. And I think back then it was like you got $150 for sitting the bench or something like that. So, but I was, I kept doing it, and then I started getting invited into preseason, and I was like, okay, you know what, we might be getting close to this. Then I went to Hershey, that last year, and one of the best coaches I've ever played for, Bob Lilly, hands down, one of the best coaches I've ever played for. The guy should be in the MLS, or should have had a chance by now in the MLS. Knows the game, is an unbelievable motivator. He's a little bit old school. He's a little bit like Tortorella when we were talking about him off the air earlier, like a little like Torts. He'll get under your skin, but I loved him. And we had a great team back then. Did very well. Guys were fantastic. lost in the finals to Rochester. But I remember, I don't think during that year, I don't think I got called up too often because I don't think Bob wanted it, or maybe they did call and Bob said, no chance. I don't remember because I think I played every game because I think or maybe I didn't play one because I remember Bob and I still talk about this day. Like, I think I had to argue with him one day because he wanted to give me a rest towards the end of the season. And I told him there's no chance. I'm playing.
No shot.
So, but it was probably Bob, Bob probably told them that, don't even call me. He's not, I'm not letting him go to the MLS during the season. So, but it was the playoffs. We were playing Vancouver and we went to Vancouver first. We beat them up there and we came back to Hershey. And I think we beat them maybe 3-1 in Vancouver or something like that. Maybe 4-1. I don't know. So we had a decent little cushion. We were playing in Hershey and it's windy as can be. And long story short, like shot comes in from my right and it's going wide and all of a sudden the wind starts bringing it. And it's one of those, oh crap, I better cover this. I end up smashing into the post, like got my whole right side. Like I was struggling. So tried to play on, couldn't play on. He subs me shortly after that. I am hurt. I'm sitting on the bench just thinking, God, I just want this game to end. I want to go home. And as I'm walking, back to the locker room after the game, I see Greg Andrulis, who was the coach of Columbus Crew at the time. And I had known him from number one goalkeepers camps way back in the day. He used to run them for Dr. Mashnick and I used to work them. So I've known Greg since I was like 15 or 16. So I'm like, hey, Greg, how are you? What are you doing here? He's like, we're here to watch you. I'm like, you are? He's like, yeah. He said, I've actually been to 3 or 4 of your games this year. You just don't know it. I'm like, huh, cool. I said, I didn't know what was going on at this point. So he says, our backup's retiring. We got a position open. Would you be interested? Yeah, for sure. He's like, all right. He's like, and plain and simple, he said, we'll draft you in the draft. Come whenever it was not expansion draft. I don't know what they even called it back then.
Yeah, there were so many different names.
Yeah, they had like 9 drafts back then. So yeah. He's like, we'll draft you, and I said, okay, cool. And he did. We had to wait a couple months, but when it finally came up, I think they drafted me. I don't know, 2nd or 3rd round. I don't even know. But yeah, true to his word, he drafted me and brought me to Columbus. So that was honestly, that's as easy as it was, or as simple as it was. It wasn't flashy. He told me he was going to draft me and he drafted me.
It's definitely a bit different from this day and age.
100% different now.
So at any point during the first draft process or the times in the A-League, was there like a specific team that you wanted to join, or were you just looking to get on any team at this point in MLS?
I think in general, any point, but like I said, I did spend a lot of time in DC, especially because I was in Virginia Beach, so it was so easy to get up there, and also Chicago. And so I was kind of hoping either one of those teams, simply because I'd spent a lot of time, especially DC. I'd spent a lot of time in DC. And they were very good back in the day, Harksey, Echeverry, Jaime Moreno, it was unbelievable. The guys that were there, and the same with Chicago, Peter Novak and guys like that in Chicago was just, both teams were so good. And so I was kind of, hoping either one of those just because I had spent time with them. But outside of that, I was like, whoever takes me, I just want to go somewhere kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so you touched on it before. You got drafted by Columbus. You're now officially a part of an MLS team. You're kind of like first I made it moment here for MLS. How did it feel to finally be drafted after having to go through the draft process the first time and not having your name called for a team? Was it like a triumphant moment? Was it like or was it more so like a, I'm ready now kind of moment?
Well, anybody who knows me knows that I never really took enough time to really think about anything I did while I played. And so I probably thought about it for about 2 seconds. And then my focus was, okay, how do I become the number one goalkeeper? Because they had Tom Prestis there at the time. And Tom, I think 2 years prior to Columbus, he had won an MLS Cup in DC. So I knew I had, very stiff competition. And I knew, Greg had told me 100%, you're going in as the number 2. So there was no illusions in my mind that I was going to play. But the way my mind always worked was, okay, let's see how long it takes me. And so I probably thought about, to answer your question, I probably thought about for about 2 seconds. Yeah, great. I got drafted. Now on to the next thing.
That's really interesting. Just from, I'm kind of different. I'm close to that, but not like that. But I was the same way. I kind of I walked on to Alfred because I was, tiny and nobody ever wanted to come look at me. So I had to go and basically beg the coach to let me go play for him. Yeah. And like I said, when I finally got that email, like, hey, all of you guys are on the team, it was like, oh, wow, I did it. But the same thing, your switch goes off. And okay, now I got to work to stay on the team. Now I got to work to make sure that I can get on the field at some point. I'm a goalkeeper 4 when I started, and then make sure you can continue to push, even like we've been talking about, right? Push yourself through being number 4, seeing 15 minutes a season, and trying to, but staying focused on that stuff. It's pretty cool. Yeah. So MLS starts off pretty good for you. Yeah, Eastern Conference first place finish, little deep playoff run, a U.S. Open Cup. How'd it feel to lift a trophy year 1? You get in there and you're already off to winning ways.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty cool. It was, it was really nice it was my first trophy. And like I said, the year before I had lost in the A-League finals. So it was my first trophy, and, it was pretty amazing to be able to share it with guys that I became very close with, like Brian Mazanoff. And, he was probably, I know this, he's probably my best friend there, and one of the guys that took me under his wing, and taught me how to be a good pro, and what it looked like. We had plenty of them there, Mazanoff, Brian McBride, a guy named Mark Clark, Mike Lapper. We had a very older team, and there were only a few of us young kids there. So, we had plenty of examples to learn from. But, I remember sharing it. And again, when you're young, you don't understand certain things. I didn't understand how hard it was to win cups. I just thought that, every couple of years you're going to win a cup, if you're on a good team. But I remember sitting in the locker room afterwards with Maze, and, he was crying, and I'm kind of like, all right, I'm excited and I'm happy and we're all happy. But, and then I realized, like, I remember thinking about like how much he's put into not just the crew career, but his entire career, and all his ankle issues that he had prior to the World Cup. And, all of that probably built up for this guy. And this was his first trophy, so I just remember that, and I it's still in my mind of him just sitting in there with it and just the joy on his face, and I remember saying to myself, like, I never want to take this for granted, and so, that was something that was really special to me, to realize that it is hard. It is very hard to win cups, regardless if it was the Open Cup and there's only a handful of games, or if it's an MLS Cup or Supporters Shield, or, they're all special for their own reasons.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I was very curious about is if you could comment on the something that's different between whether it be the training atmosphere, the locker room, the connections you made on a team with a winning culture like this one, versus, let's say, I think in Worcester you were kind of struggling your first year a little bit. What was he at?
First of all, it's Worcester.
Worcester?
That's how they say it. Worcester, Mass.
Worcester, Mass.
But
I
it's
got
spelled
a buddy who went to UMass Dental, and he's starting to talk like that now.
But it's spelled the way you said it, but it's Worcester, Mass.
Worcester, Mass.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because I look at all three MLS teams I played for, and the ones that were successful, or the successful years at places, there was an atmosphere in the locker room where everybody was pulling in the same direction. The teammate more than the individual. It was like that in Columbus, and it was led by the senior players, McBrides and Masonoffs and guys like that. When I went to Chicago, same idea. CJ Browns, Chris Armises, guys like that leading the way, and you followed them. I mean, to this day, when I see Chris Armis, or when I talk to Chris Armis on the phone, I still call him captain, because he was the best captain, hands down, I ever played for. I was just talking to him last week, and every time we either talk on the phone or I text him, I'm like, "Hey, Cap, how are you?" Because he just, from the day I got in there, I mean, I just was like, this is what a cap, like, it was unbelievable. Like, I get goosebumps still even thinking about some of the times playing with him. Just amazing. But the camaraderie, and when I was in Chicago that first go round, like I didn't spend preseason with them. I spent preseason in Columbus. And so I got there like literally the week before the season started. So I really didn't know anybody and all that. And it took me a little time. But I thought one of the things that was really cool about that kind of 3-year period was we were all younger. We were all in our mid to late 20s. But we had this, group text, and it was really cool. Like if somebody said, "Hey, I'm going over here to eat dinner, at 7:00 tonight, if anyone wants to join," like 7, 8, 9, 10 guys would show up. Like everybody just wanted to be around each other, right? Like we had such a great group of guys, Chris Rolfe, Logan Paws, Justin Mapp, like such a great group of guys. And it's just that team camaraderie, that bonding, that, hey, we're all in it for a bigger purpose than ourselves, that makes you successful. And same idea when I went to San Jose. Again, a little different over there, because in San Jose, I mean, as you guys know, we were called the Bad News Bears for most of the time, and we were always the underdog, especially at that time, because LA was, they had Landon and Robbie Keane, and they were spending all this money. And then some guy named David Beckham decided to show up at some point. Like they were spending all this money, and here we are, up north that, didn't spend a lot. But we loved it. We loved that, hey, we're going to rain on your parade kind of, thing. And, we weren't pretty. We didn't play very pretty football at all. But, we wanted to kind of upset everybody, and we did. And we had we kind of had that same camaraderie in the locker room, Wando and Alan Gordon and Len Hart and Sammy Cronin and Jason Hernandez, like just a great group of guys. And again, wasn't attractive a lot of times, and I think back to Jason Hernandez, like one of my favorite defenders, and he loved blocking shots. Like he should have been a hockey player. Like he loved it. And I remember one game, like, I don't know how many he blocked, but I said, you know what? I told him, I said, you either need to play hockey or you need to play indoor soccer, because you get a bonus for every block you make. You realize that, right? I said, you're playing the wrong sport. He just started laughing. But just a great group of people that wanted to always be around each other. That for me makes a good locker room. Unfortunately, when I went back to Chicago the second time, right before I left the MLS and went to Indy XI, it was the total opposite. And, that was really hard for me, because my memories were of a very successful Chicago Fire. You think about those 3 years I was there, we were very close to, not just winning Eastern Conferences and getting to MLS Cups. We lost on penalty kicks in a Superliga final. Like we were always just one little step away. But then when I went back, it was the opposite. It was, and I remember talking to Jeff Laurentowicz about it when I first got there. And, he kind of filled me in on it. I was like, wow, it was tough, and everybody doing their own thing, and kind of, you're trying to pull everything together, but it's not working. And it's just, it's hard, and it's very draining, and day in and day out becomes draining when you can't bring everything together.
Right. It almost feels like a proper job than instead of something you're going to do because one, you enjoy it, but it's so much easier that way. But then it turned, they say if you do something you love, you never work a day in your life. That turned into proper work. You had to get yourself to go through it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I love going in every day. I probably, especially towards the end of my career, I love training more than I love games. I still like games, but I like the preparation. I like preparing, Monday I'm doing this, Tuesday I'm doing this, Wednesday I'm doing this, kind of have that checklist. And then, Saturday was like the test, Saturday was your written exam. And, how did I do? Regardless of the score, for me, especially the older I got, it wasn't always about, did we win or did we lose? Now, obviously I wanted to win every game, but it was more about, did I do what I could do? And did I handle the situations I was put in properly?
Right.
And for me, that was about the preparation that I had leading into the game. So that's the way I kind of looked at it, especially on some of the years that I was on a team that we had tough years. So you had a lot more losses. So you try to forget those and you try to focus more on my preparation and, was my game good because of my preparation, right? Did I do what I could?
Right. And at that point you have a starting block at that point. Okay, this area is fixed. I've done what I can do. Now how can I influence maybe my center back to read something a little bit better, my outside back to make a run, right? It's a starting point.
Correct. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I had a question. So maybe this is because my background was in such an individualistic sport, and tennis is like there's not really a lot of teamwork that goes on there. When you have that really strong chemistry outside of the field, when you're going out to restaurants and everybody's showing up and having a good time together, how does that benefit translate onto the field? Is it more so like you have a better understanding of the guys you play with? Is it like now that I know you better, I'm gonna fight even harder for you and try to do better for you?
Yeah, you understand the person, you understand the individual, right? So if I understand more about, one of my buddies and we're hanging out more, I've got his back, right? I'm gonna have his back even more, and so it just brought us together, like a band of brothers. And it's very important, regardless of what sport, it's very important in any team sport to have that camaraderie, now, I'm not going to sit here and say that everybody on every team got along, because there were guys that I played with that did a fantastic job playing and I could count on them every game, but I didn't care for them. I wasn't going to, go have a beer with them per se, but we were both professional enough to be able to say, hey, our personal feelings we leave them outside and we have a job to do on this field. But no, I mean, when you have that feeling, that camaraderie feeling, like you're gonna work that much harder for each one of you, because you believe in them and you believe in what you're doing together.
Yeah, that's an aspect I really feel like I missed out on. Like I feel like when you win in that case with guys that you love playing on the field with, it's just got to feel like just that much better.
Yeah.
I wish I had the opportunity to experience that, but maybe in the future when I can go find some team sport that I can play.
Hey, you had doubles tennis. You had something.
That's doubles tennis isn't the same. It's not the same. All right, so back to Columbus. Year 3, accolades and accomplishments were out the roof. There was a 18-game unbeaten streak, Supporter Shield trophy, and MLS goalkeeper of the year finalist. One question we had on the 18-game unbeaten streak: is it exciting and motivating, or is there kind of like what's the right word? Like a daunting feeling of, oh no, like, is this the game where we break the streak kind of thing?
We honestly didn't talk about it that much. We didn't worry about it. We knew we had a good team, and our focus was to try to win every game we played, regardless of what streak we were on or weren't on. And so there wasn't really any talk about it. I think, if I remember correctly, more of those games, I think, ended up in ties than necessarily wins, but we knew we had a good team, and we knew that we were going to be in every game we played, and the streak would take care of itself. It wasn't really talked about.
Yeah, I could definitely imagine. Did you have any idea that there was like even an unbeaten streak going on at the time, or?
Yeah. I mean, you know it because it's in the paper, and
Mhm.
the outside people are talking about it. So all the players knew about it, but it was, it came down from, the coaching staff that, look, it's not important to us. It's there, like, we're not going to pretend it's not there. We know it's there, but we're not going to focus on it and put our focus on, well, we got to keep the streak going. We wanted to win games to win the Supporters Shield. That's what our focus was. And then obviously getting into the playoffs.
Right. On the goalkeeper of the year finalist, getting that accomplishment, how did it feel at the time to be mentioned for the likes of this award with some legendary names like Joe Cannon and Pat Onstad?
Yeah, it was awesome. Again, I didn't put much stock into it because, again, back then it wasn't like it is today, right? I mean, it wasn't all over Twitter or Instagram or all that, right? So there wasn't a lot made about it. I think I heard, but the PR guy told me, like, hey, you're one of the finalists. I'm like, okay, great.
Cool.
But again, it's not like it is today where it's blasted everywhere. So, but again, for me, and you hit the nail on the head. I mean, Pat was one of the guys. He was playing for Rochester when I played in the USL. So I talked to him quite a bit, before he went over to San Jose. Again, another fantastic gentleman, had a lot of time for me. I have all the time in the world for him. So to be mentioned in the circle with him, and then obviously Joe Cannon, Joe had an amazing career as well. Was just, it was very flattering for me, especially that early in my MLS career.
Yeah, that was one of the cool things, is going back and when you do research for things like this and kind of seeing the list of names and how they change and how, legends are born, per se, right? Like you see, okay, they're in there one time, and then you see 4 times after. It's like, oh, this is when it kicked off.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, this also started off a little bit of international for you. I believe right around the same time you got called in the USMT camp, right?
Yeah, I think right after that year, if I remember correctly, was the first camp, and I think it was just a week camp in Columbus, like right at the end of the season. And Casey had come in. That was the first time I knew Casey, but it was the first time I trained with him and was around him, and he was always one of the guys I looked up to. So it was really cool. It was a quick one. It was a quick 1 week. Had a game at the end of it, and I don't even remember who we played, and that was the end of it. But it was just, part of me kind of felt like, oh, they just called me in because I'm local, and I'm right here. They don't have to pay for a plane ticket. But it was just, it was an honor to get called into the national team to begin with. So I was really excited to kind of end that season on that little accolade.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. I mean, every kid dreams of wearing that badge, of being a part of the men's national team. What did that feel like when you put the jersey on for the first time you saw it actually? I mean, I know you were in the youth camp for a little bit, but at the senior level,
Yeah, it was, I mean, to play, look, I had an amazing youth career, went to an under 17 world championships, had a little time with the under 20s, but to play for your full team, and the other part for me around that time, that made it even more special was my brother was in the military. So, he was in the military when, in my early days too, but again, I didn't kind of put the two together per se. But as you get older, again, you understand what's really important in this world. And So for me to be able to hear that national anthem and to have that, that crest on my chest, like just meant a little bit more, so it was an unbelievable honor to be able to represent my country.
Yeah. So that's always a dream, but absolutely, I can only imagine, right? Unfortunately, right about at that same time, right, 05 and 06, you catch a bit of the injury bug.
Yeah.
So you get called in the men's national team, goalkeeper of the year finalist the year before. Now you got to miss 2 seasons in a row. Talk about, if you could, the mentality that got you through rehab, got you to continue just not quitting, right? That, because it's very easy at that point to say, okay, you know what, I can't do it again. But did you have you talked about some relationships you had already. You have a coach, a teammate that just took you over and said, hey, you're going to get through this, man. You keep pushing, you keep going.
Yeah, I mean, it's called stupidity. I didn't know what else to do. So I'm not smart enough to do anything else. So no, it was devastating the first year, right? Because I had just come out of a January camp where I actually got my first start for the national team. Bruce, and at that time, Phil Wedden was the goalkeeper coach. Like, they told me how well I did. And, I had actually, if you look back, I went into that camp and it was Joe Cannon, Kevin Hartman, Matt Reese, Nick Raimondo. But Joe was, Joe.
What a group.
Yeah. At that time, Joe was kind of the #1 domestic MLS guy. Right. Uh-huh. You had Casey and you had Brad, but they, and all those guys, but they're playing in Europe. Right. For the MLS guys, it was Joe and Kevin were the top 2. And then, the rest of us. Right. I went into that camp. I don't even know, probably 3rd, 4th, 5th. I don't even know. I was just happy to be there. Mm-hmm. And, and next thing I know, I'm playing the game at the end of that. And I'm like, oh, what happened? And like, it was really cool. I mean, it was unbelievable. And so coming out of that camp, it was like, holy crap. Like I might be able to do this kind of thing. So I went from that unbelievable high, in whatever it was, January, February, to, tearing my ACL when one of my teammates fell on me in LA, an away game in LA off a corner kick. And if you could find that on YouTube, you will hear somebody yelling like you've never heard, because it was unbelievable. And that's back when I think they had the microphones right on the back of the crossbar. So you'll hear every but yeah, it was devastating. I mean, it was devastating. But again, doctor comes out, does the old test. You tore your ACL. I'm like, no, I'm fine. I'll be okay. Just me running, dumbass that I am. Like I thought, it's no problem. Here are doctors telling me I've torn my ACL, and I'm telling them, no, I'm okay.
No, I can keep going.
Yeah, that didn't last too long, by the way. So yeah, I went in the locker room. It literally happened right before halftime. So I went in the locker room. Doctor's in there with me. He's checking. Yeah, like you're like, okay. So I remember Greg coming in. Some of the players coming in, Mays and those guys. Like they had to go back out for the second half, and I just remember sitting there, like. And my phone, I had my phone with me, but I didn't want to answer any phone calls. It's ringing nonstop. The first message that when I listened to it, was actually Phil Wedden, and him and Bruce were together, and they were watching the game wherever they were. And I just remember him saying, look, like, we're sorry, we're watching. You don't have to do it tonight, but at some point, let us know like what it is. And it took me a while. Like it just devastated me, because I was like, when that's my first phone call, first message on the phone, I was just like, it kind of clicks in your head. I'm like, oh crap. I may have been in their plans. Like I may have been really in their plans, cause they're watching the game and they're calling right away. So that was pretty hard for me to take. But it was just, I've always had this mentality where, because I was small, that I was always going to outwork everybody. I was always the first on the field. I was always the last to leave. And people will tell you that. And I'll tell you, a Joe Cannon story later about it. But, and once I kind of got over the disappointment, and it took a little while, but once I had surgery, it was like, okay. Doc's like, it'll take you 6 months. I said, no, it's going to take me 4 months. He's like, no, I said, you can try to slow me down all you want, but I'm telling you. And, that switch in my mind just went. And as soon as I had the surgery and I started rehabbing, I mean, I would, once I was able to really start rehabbing, I would spend so much time in the facility, just lifting and running and biking and every little thing. If they told me to do, 10 reps of this, I did 30. I just was like, no, I'm coming back from this and I'm proving people wrong, and I did. I mean, I was back to training in 4 months. Doc didn't clear me till 6 months, but we were in the off season anyway, so it didn't really matter at that point.
Right.
But he knew he had to slow me down. So get back from the first one, going very well. Played the first, I think, 10 or 11 games of the next season. I think this is when Ziggy came in as well, if I remember correctly. And another freak accident. Stepped on Ezra's foot on a corner kick. Ezra was running this way. I was coming this way to get the ball. So I planted and I turned. And as I went to turn and push off, he pulled his foot out from underneath mine and it torqued it again. This was actually in Columbus this time. And I knew at that time I knew it didn't hurt like it did the first time, but I just knew. I'm like, I just did it. And again, Pete Edwards, who's the owner of the team now, he was a doc at the time, came up, did the old test. He goes, yeah, you just tore your graft, because he's the one that did my surgery. So he knew.
You know it.
So now I'm like, holy crap. It was literally like, I think it was a week shy of a year, if I remember correctly, or something around that ballpark. And I'm just like, you got to be kidding me. So that was very hard, because I had done so much to get back. I didn't take any time off. I just went the entire winter and double sessions and whatever I needed to do. And I was in good form. And then that happens. And so I was like, holy moly. But then, once I got my mentality right, and it's all about your mentality. Once I got that mentality kind of switched over from, feeling sorry for myself and, being a little whiner to, okay, it's time to get back to work and grind. The second time was actually easier to rehab, because I knew exactly the steps. And so for me, it was like, okay, the first couple of weeks, you're going to be doing this. The next couple of weeks, you're going to be doing this. If you have no setbacks at week 12, you're jogging and and so mentally, even though I pushed myself just as hard, it was a little bit easier because I knew what it entailed. Whereas the first year, I was always scared to death to kind of move to the next process, because I was like, are they sure I can do that? Are they sure I can do that? And the second time around, I was like, yeah, I know I can do that. Let's go.
I'm good there. Yeah.
Let's move. Let's cruise through the process. So, but again, once we got that right, and the same thing, I was back to on the field doing goalkeeper training at 4 months, cleared at 6, but I also knew, like the doctor had told me that time, that, look, if it goes again, like, that's it. You're not going to come back and do another rehab after a third surgery. So I knew we had to, get that one right. And I knew that, like, this was kind of, in essence, my last straw. So we were a little bit more conservative in that aspect.
Sure.
So if you look at my career, that's when I went from over to Chicago. And that first year, I didn't play a lot in Chicago when I first got there. Matt Pickens was there as well. But, that was more of, okay, you've basically had 2 years of rehab. Like, we got to make sure we get you right for the future. But yeah, it was all about my mentality. And again, I was just one of those types, because of everything I've dealt with since, basically being 15 years old and telling me I was never going to be good enough because I wasn't tall enough, that it was just, I've always had a chip on my shoulder, right? Like, I've always had a chip on my shoulder that I'm going to prove you wrong. And I don't care how many people, and then that's one of the things I always tell my kids when I'm, coaching them, and they're like, well, I'm not going to be the tallest. And like, yeah, you take mental notes of who tells you you're not good enough because of your size. And it's literally like a checklist, right? Like, you go to the grocery store. I said, and when you prove that person wrong, cross them off your list, and then just move down to the next person. And I did that my whole career. I wasn't one to, like, talk trash to those, those people or whatever. It was more like, when I proved them wrong, that was enough proof. And okay, let me move to the next guy on my list. And that was my motivation a lot of times. That was my motivation of, okay, you didn't think I was tall enough. You didn't think I was good enough because I wasn't tall enough. Well, I proved you wrong.
Man, all right, I'm going to go on a little bit of a personal tangent here, but just to hear that is getting 17-year-old me like ready to run through a wall. Junior year of high school, people were telling me the same thing. You're not going anywhere because you're too small. And I actually had a coach who had coached me back when I was 10, came and visited. He was a college coach at that point. He watched me play in some indoor game and he goes, if you want to play, you can play. And it was from that point where I came in, and again, I was the shortest guy on every team, and I had to go out and prove it to them. But I also, like I said, I went through injuries as well, where I dislocated my shoulder 26 hours after having the head coach, after playing a spring game, keeping 90-minute shutout, and then the head coach saying, get ready for sophomore year, it's your net. 26 hours later, shoulder comes out.
Yeah.
Done for 14 months. I worked all the way through it. I pushed myself, get the mentality right. I worked with a buddy of mine. We worked every day, 2 days. Get out in the morning, go for a run, come back in the afternoon. Let's do a keeper session. 7 hours after getting on campus, the other one comes out. Doctor says you're done. You're never playing again. And it, like I said, just hearing the whole thing. If they gave me one more shot, it would have been the same thing. Give me one more chance, and I would have done it. But they didn't let me. But just hearing that thing, and I'm hoping whoever is listening to this has this fire set in them now, because right now I'm sitting in a chair ready to go put my gloves back on and get back out and do it again, because it that motivation, that mindset of I'm going to prove you wrong no matter how many times you tell me I can't do something. Yep. Was from, again, I'm 25 now, so 8 years now of me just in that same mindset. Actually, I had to talk off of doing that because school didn't want to pay for me to go back to the hospital. But again, it's just I hope people who are listening to this understand what that really means and get a fire lit underneath them, because it is such an important part of playing at a high level, whether you're going to high school, playing on a varsity team, whether you're playing JV from a team that you isn't playing at that level, whether you're going to college, D3, D2, D1, going up to the next level, it doesn't matter. That mentality needs to be there. And I really hope people understand that.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, can we pause for 1 second while I go get my charger?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't lose.
All right, so this is probably a good transition point to something happier that Andrew and I love to talk about.
Okay.
And that's roster rules really quick here.
Oh.
So in 2007, you were picked up by TFC Toronto.
In
the waiver draft.
Yeah. TFC story.
Yeah. And then you were traded because of international slots for the Canadian side. Yeah. I think Chicago gave up a 4th rounder. And when Andrew and I were doing research on this ahead of time, we don't believe the 4th rounder was ever actually used by
Probably
Toronto.
Not. Yeah,
it was for a supplemental draft in 2009, and they got rid of that draft in 2008. So the pick became null and void, which was hilarious. That they picked you up for literally nothing. And got the goalkeeper of the year out of it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So yeah, it'd be crazy, right? So yeah, I go from Toronto picks me up in, I don't know, the 48-hour rule or whatever it was. And so I meet them down in Bradenton. Actually, yeah, in Bradenton, in Florida. And I meet them in preseason. And it's going well. I think we were there maybe a week or so. And then we go up to Charleston for the Charleston tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And again, going well. The goalie coach at the time for TFC was this guy, Eddie, who I still talk to today, great goalkeeper coach. And, him and I hit it off. He's like, you're doing really well. Like, you're probably going to be the guy. Like, he pulled me aside one day. I'm like, oh, that's cool. And the day before the tournament starts, we had just come in from morning training. We go back to the hotel. We had lunch. Mo Johnson's the coach. So Mo's like, Bushy, I need to talk to you after, before you head back to your room. I'm like, okay. And he's like, I don't even know how to say this. He's like, if I had a game tomorrow, I said, well, you do. So if you have a game tomorrow, then you're my number 1 goalkeeper. He said, but I'm about to trade for Richard Marooney, and I'm only allowed 5, slots on the roster, and I need more help in the field than I do the goal. So I'm going to have to release you tomorrow. And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at him going, that's a good one. Like, welcome to Canada. Yeah. All right. Let's kid on the new guy, And he's like, no, I'm dead serious. He's like, I'm about to trade for Richard Maroon, and I need more help in the field than I do the goal. And he's like, I'm sorry. Like, I know this is the last thing you expected, because I know, you're doing really well. He's like, but I need to do this for the better of the team. And I remember looking at him going, I'm not even, like, I understand what you're saying. Like, I'm not even mad at you. Like, I literally understand what you're saying. I was like, but I said, Mo, what the hell do I even do? It's literally like 2 weeks before the season starts. Who's gonna pick me up? Where am I gonna go? Like, this is crazy. And he's like, I don't know, but he's like, I'll help you any way I can. And again, I can't make these stories up. Like, these stories are unbelievable. And so I go back to my room, and I'm like, I'm devastated. I'm like, how can you tell me I'm going to be your number 1 goalkeeper and then tell me you're going to waive me at the same time? So I had to wait a day to fly home. And meanwhile, so literally they give me a ticket, and I'm supposed to go back to Columbus on that. I think it was a Wednesday. And so the guys, the team's actually leaving to go to the Charleston Stadium. So I'm in the lobby waiting for the shuttle to the airport, and they're going to the stadium. And as I get on the shuttle and we start driving to the airport, Daryl Shore, who's the goalkeeper coach at Chicago, calls me. And again, every goalkeeper and every goalkeeper coach kind of knew each other back then, and he's like, where are you? And I'm like, I'm in Charleston. I'm heading to the airport. He's like, don't get on the plane. And I remember just saying to him, like, Daryl, I'm not in the headspace for you to mess with me.
Yeah.
I said, what's going on? He goes, we are in, I think they were in Fort Lauderdale or somewhere down in Florida. He goes, we're heading to the fields for training. Dave wants to bring you in for, basically from Thursday through Sunday. He just wants to get eyes on you to make sure everything is good. Obviously coming off my knee and everything is good, and we're going to sign you. And I told him, I said, Daryl, I said, I'm not coming for a tryout. I said, I can tell you I'm good. He goes, no. He goes, we've already checked in with Toronto, and Mo and Eddie, they've all said you look fantastic, but Dave just wants to see you for a couple days. He's like, I said, you're going to sign me, right? And he's like, yes, we're going to sign you. It's like, okay. So literally, instead of going back to Columbus, so he goes, just go to the airport and wait. As soon as we get to the field, Ron Stern, who was the administrator at the time, he's like, Ron's working on a ticket as we're driving. He'll call you at the airport, or he'll call you when you're at the airport, and he'll tell you what airline to go to. Again, I can't make this stuff up. I am sitting in the airport in Charleston with a ticket home to Columbus and my phone in the other one, staring at it. Right. And I went up to whoever I was flying. I went up to to check in, and I told the lady, this is exactly what's going on right now. So I have to wait as long as I can. But if this phone doesn't ring, I'm getting on your flight. Right. It was one of those. I'm literally sitting there. And now I see her kind of looking at me, and I'm going, oh, God, we're getting close. And luckily, all of a sudden, my phone rings. He goes, okay, whatever. You're going to Delta. You're taking this flight. I'm like, perfect. So I waved to the lady. Said, I'm good. I'm going here now. That was it. And literally flew down to, I think it was Fort Lauderdale. Flew down Wednesday night, trained Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I think we trained Sunday morning. And then I flew back to Columbus Sunday. And they had Monday off. So I flew into Chicago on Monday night, and we started training, Tuesday through whatever. And, but the crazy thing was because they wanted to cut my salary so much that, because it was a last second thing, I hadn't signed the contract yet because my agent was still working with them. And on Friday, we're sitting in Dave Sarakin's office. My agent's on the phone, and it's that, Dave's like, we have to get this in by whatever it was, 5 o'clock, East Coast, 4 o'clock. Like if it's not in, they won't put you on the roster for tomorrow night. And I need you on the roster for tomorrow night. And I'm sitting there going, I'm not signing that. Like that's terrible. We're not doing this. So it's just like standoff. Meanwhile, I got my, we got the agent on the speakerphone. Like it's comical. And the watch is just ticking. It's ticking. We ended up getting it done, and I was on the roster for that next week, that first game. But it was, it was crazy because I started the week in TFC, ended the week, with Chicago, and again, it was very interesting. Only in the old days of the MLS could all of that happen.
I'd say that we've heard some really great, like, crazy pro stories. That's got to be up there. Is one of the greatest things I've ever heard.
I mean, I had I was on 3 teams in that preseason: Columbus, TFC, and Chicago.
Just on a side note, Richard Mulrooney was so important to them. He played 2 games all season that year. Yeah, 2 games all season. They finished 25th, conceded 49, or they finished 7th, conceded 49 goals, 25 total points. Dead last, I believe, Wooden Spoon. Yep, Wooden Spoon. You think they regret their decision? Probably, right?
You would think so.
The thing of it is I knew Richie. So I just happened one summer to play in Nashville. I think it was after my freshman year in college. And his older brother played on the kind of amateur team we had that summer. And Richie always came up and trained with us. So I actually knew him, and he was one of the nicest guys I've ever met. So like when Mo told me, I was like, I can't even be mad at Richie because he's such a nice dude. Like, he's such a nice guy, and I'm like, you're taking my roster spot, but I'm not even mad at you.
That is, yeah, that's got to be top 3. One of the greatest things I've ever heard. So the question that I wanted to transition into here, first of all, do you think personally anybody in an MLS front office, locker room, anything, do they understand what the roster rules are, or are they just playing guess and check? No, definitely not, right?
No.
Okay, we're all on the same page there. Great. Yeah, we have been doing this for now. This is season 3, episode 33, and we still struggle sometimes with what the rules are. Yeah, nobody has an idea.
Nobody knows. Sometimes I think they make them up as they go. I don't know.
Yes. We have completely agreed that there is some form of allocation money created every like 3 or 4 years just for the fun of it. It's all funny money at this point. But when you get to Chicago, you're on the bench most of the year. What was it like being number 2? How did you embrace that role? What was your mentality going through to be? Like you said, you came out of Toronto basically thinking you were going to be number 1. Now you're playing number 2 for the entire, basically the entire season. What's that role? What's that mindset? And for anybody who might be listening, who isn't in that number 1 spot right now, what advice can you give them on being maybe a good teammate as a backup, right?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been one to say like you need to say I'm your number 1 or you need to guarantee me. Like it didn't matter to me what number I was. I was going to work as hard as I could every day, and I'm going to prove it every day, and I'm going to outwork anybody else that's around me. And so again, Daryl was I had some very good goalkeeper coaches throughout my career, and Daryl was one of them. He told me right away when I went down for those couple of days in Florida, like they were giving Matt the opportunity, right? Matt had been there a couple of years, and it was his chance to be the number 1. So Daryl was, playing with me, straightforward with me, and said, look, we're giving him a run at this. And I said, look, Daryl, I understand, and I'm okay with that because right now my focus is, yes, I want to play, but more importantly, I want to make sure I get my knee right and there's no setbacks, because I knew that, again, I didn't have a strike 3, right? So that was my focus of more of like, I just wanted to get through the season healthy to know I kind of got over that last hump and then we were good. So, that was my mindset at first. But then, of course, as I get going, and as, weeks go by and months go by, and all of a sudden I started getting a sniff, and the change started to happen. And then all of a sudden, Saracen was fired, and Juan Carlos Osorio came in. And I absolutely loved Juan Carlos because he was like me. It was no nonsense. Like if he said 8 a.m., it was 8 a.m. If you weren't there, you were in trouble, right? Like he was old school and I liked it. But one of the things he did, because I think I had played a couple games straight, for Dave right at the end, and then everything happened. So Juan went back to Matt, and Matt was a very good goalkeeper, very good. He was young at the time, but very good. And so I let a couple games go by, and then I don't remember where we were, but we were traveling somewhere. When we got to the hotel, I asked Juan for, a quick chat, and he was, again, great. I loved him. He really respected me, because of my work ethic. And, so we met in his room, and I said, look, I'm just curious what I got to do, to get back to number one. And he said, look, he goes, your work ethic's unbelievable. You should be a starter, 100% in this league. He goes, but I'm just coming from Man City. I want a tall goalie. You're not tall. You're not going to play. Like, just like that. Literally said that.
I've had a lot of those conversations.
Literally said that to me. And I was like, okay. And I said, all right. I said, look, I will tell you this. I said, you won't have any issues from me, out of me for the rest of the season. I'll continue to work. I'll continue to prepare. I'll continue to be ready. If you need to make a change or anything happens. I said, but, at the end of the season, if you're still here next year, then we need to have a serious conversation, because if you're here, unfortunately, I can't be here. And I said, I really like you as a coach. I think you're a fantastic coach. And he was, he's like, look, no problem. We'll sort it out in the off season. So, that was that. And then, he ended up going to New York. And then that's when, if I remember correctly, that's when Dennis Hamlet took over.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah. And then that year I was goalkeeper of the year. Now the funny part of that story is I'm driving home from, at that time it was called Toyota Park. I think it's called Geek Seat or Seat Geek or whatever.
Yeah, it's some weird name now.
Yeah, so let's just call it Toyota Park. So I'm driving home from Toyota Park, like the last week of regular season. And I was, or whenever it was playoffs or whatever, I'd just been named goalkeeper of the year, whatever it was. And I'm hitting traffic. So I'm like, okay, I'm just sitting here and my phone rings and, it's up on, I had a Jeep at the time, and it comes up and I don't recognize the number. It doesn't come up as a name. And usually if it doesn't come up as a name, I don't answer it. I'm like, well, I'm stuck in traffic. Why not? Let's see who this is. I'm like, hey, it's like, it's Juan Carlos. Says, hey, is this Jon Busch? I'm like, yeah, who's this? He's like, it's Juan Carlos. I'm like, hey, Juan Carlos, how are you? And he's like, good. He's like, congratulations. We chit chat for a few minutes. And I swear to God, he goes, I need to ask you a question. I said, okay, what's up? And he goes, you want to play in New York next year? And I just started laughing. I said, Juan Carlos, I said, I like you as a coach. You're a good guy. Like, I said, but you had your chance last year and you missed it.
Yep.
And he's, yep, I did. And I said, look, I wish you luck. And he wished me luck for the playoffs and whatnot. And that was it. But it was the funniest thing. I was like, usually I don't answer those calls. And I was just like, I'll answer it because I'm stuck in traffic. Why not?
Right.
It's Juan Carlos. So
that's so funny.
It was kind of funny. So.
Yeah. So going into that goalkeeper of the year conversation, right? Just to run through some of your numbers here, unbelievable numbers, by the way. Never missed a minute, right? Especially coming off of an injury. That's crazy. Best save percentage in the league. What are we at? Just about 78%. 122 saves. Top of the charts in shutouts. You earn goalkeeper of the year. Obviously, runner up in 04. How does it feel to finally be best of the best? I know you said you didn't harp on a lot of these, things like that, but did it feel a little bit more special than your usual, 4 seconds of like, okay, that's cool?
Well, again, yeah, I mean, honestly, I didn't put a lot into it. And to be quite honest, it wasn't anything I did special. It was the guys in front of me. Again, I talked about the team camaraderie, but CJ Browns, Baki Samaris, the guys that I had in front of me that did all the hard work, there's the ones that made my job easy, and my biggest thing was just, I wanted to be consistent game in and game out.
Mhm.
You know, and that was another thing that Scotty Garlick had taught me years ago, you know, back in Greensboro, North Carolina, was the best goalkeepers, regardless of what leagues, are the ones that their best and their worst, you know, are like this. That
Close
you
together.
can't tell the difference. And he's
Yep.
like, it's all about consistency. You don't want to have your best game up here and your worst game down here. It's like, you want to be there. And so for me, it was more of just, every year I played, it was just, I just want to be consistent. And, you know, whatever I had to do. And again, that year I didn't have to do a lot because of the guys who played in front of me. They did so well, and they played so well. It was just, it really made my job easy. So a lot of the credit has to go to those guys that played in front of me.
Yep. Yeah, you're a goalkeeper, all right. That's a goalkeeper answer right there. I love that.
But that's the truth. It's the
But
truth.
it's true, right? It's absolutely true. You're only as good as the people who are in front of you.
Yeah.
100%. Your crew that you had beat out, John Conway, Greg Sutton, Will Hesmer, and another one of my favorites, Matt Reese. Matt Reese is another one that I loved watching. I was like, oh, this guy, I like the way he plays.
Yeah.
Better class in 04 or 07. Which one was harder to be a part of, do you think?
Probably the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I think I'd probably agree. You had again, the other guys are very good, but the other ones are legends. Those guys were.
Yeah.
You think about best of the best.
Yeah. I mean, when you're talking about guys like Pat and Joe and Kevin and, you know, Matt's in there, Nick, like, those are legends. There's a lot of very, very good goalkeepers that played in this league. And then there's that next level. And those guys are next level.
Yeah, 100%. So then the other thing, this one I'm going to take. Connor's supposed to ask one, but this one's going to come from me. This is my personal question.
Okay.
So, like I said, I've been coaching goalkeepers now 2 years in a club setting, but you know, ever since I was in high school, right? I like to talk a lot. Right? Again, I'm 5'6", so I talked a lot about, forget about whatever size issues you have. You can sort that out later, but focus on the little things, right? How your footwork is, where your positioning's at, how you're communicating with your team, your aggressiveness, your read on the ball, the things that you can control. What other advice do you think you can give to somebody maybe being a little bit undersized in the goalkeeper spot? The other questions you already answered, so that's good.
Look, at the end of the day, and maybe it's because my size, maybe it's not, but I believe that if you're good enough, you're tall enough. You know, it goes for male and female. It doesn't matter. You know,
right.
If you're good enough, you're tall enough. And so, you know, I think, again, it always worked for me. I knew because of my size, I did not have a long leash, you know, as maybe some of these bigger guys had. And so for me, I knew that every aspect of my game had to be spot on, and every day I had to be spot on, you know. So, you know, whether it was my handling or whether it was dealing with crosses or breakaways or my distribution or whatever, I knew that every component of my game, I had to be the best I could be at it.
Yep.
And then every day of the week, and it was part of my mentality from the beginning, was every day for me, it was like World Cup day. It didn't matter if it was a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Friday, or actually game days. Like, you know, I remember, you know, some senior players, you know, coming to me after, you know, on a Tuesday after 4v4s going, hey, it's okay. It's okay. I mean, no, I lost. It sucks. You know, I took everything so serious and so personal. But I think, again, it goes back to the chip on my shoulder. But I think, you know, knowing that I didn't have, at least in my mind, that I didn't have that long leash, you know, made me just focus that much more on every little intricacy of what I did, you know, as a goalkeeper, whether it was in the weight room. You know, I was a gym rat. I love being in the weight room. I love my off-season work. You know, I literally take 2 weeks off and that was it. 2 weeks off at the end of the season, and then I was back in the weight room. Like, I couldn't wait to get back. So I knew the importance of it. I knew, especially for me, I knew how much I needed that because I had to be explosive, you know? So I wanted to make sure that every facet of my game on and off the field was the best it could be, because I knew that, again, when people looked at me right away, it was, yeah, he's a good goalkeeper, but
always the but.
For me, it was always, every time I moved up another level, okay, yeah, he's a good shot stopper and he can read the ball well and, he's good off his line, but how is he going to deal with crosses? And when I went from college to USL, same thing. So I spent extra time dealing with that. When I went, again, just dealing with bodies, and I went from USL to MLS, the same thing. And I remember spending extra days out after training, just having crosses come in, having guys around me, just getting smacked around, and I grew up playing hockey. So getting bumped and getting hit didn't bother me at all. It was more of just dealing with the timing and figuring out, can I catch that? Do I need to box that? And every level I went up, the serves were whipped in more, they weren't floated. And now there's bigger, stronger guys around me. And now I'm learning, I'm adjusting, I'm figuring things out, because if you look back, like, I remember talking to Greg and Drulis about it. You look back on my last year in the USL and then my first year in Columbus, right? USL, a lot of the ball, or USISL, whatever it was back then, a lot of the crosses were kind of floated in, so I could get my feet going, my footwork going, and I'm, 14, 15, 16 yards out. Yeah, thanks very much. Boom. And
I'll take that. Yep.
Now all of a sudden the MLS, things are dipping and, and being swung in more. And all of a sudden now I start to come and I realize, crap, I can't get there, so I had this learning process of, hey, sometimes it's okay to let your defenders deal with that, and you don't have to come out as far. And sometimes I learned, hey, you're going to get smacked around in the MLS a bit more than you are in the USISL. So that's when I started learning, doing extra sessions where I had bodies around me, figuring out, I can't catch this one. I gotta punch this one. So it was just a learning aspect of it. But I feel like I almost turned a weakness into a positive, because I knew that was the first thing everybody was going to kind of go to. Good shot stopper, good with his feet, good, but he can't deal with crosses. He can't deal with, so I spent extra time on that.
Yeah, been there. Heard that one. That was always the thing, right? I was the great playing out of the back, and we'll go back to that conversation you had with about Pickens being bigger, right? My junior year of high school, I was supposed to start a varsity, and they called the sophomore up. He's 6'5", great friend, love the kid. And the preseason finishes, the kid can't save anything. Yeah. And I mean, the coach calls me over and he goes, "You will start on any other team on Long Island," but he's 6'5", so he's getting the number one kid. And I'm like, I can't argue. Yeah, it happens. And we didn't do great his sophomore year, but his junior year we won the state title, right? So I never disagreed with him. But again, it was always, I was better with my feet, I was a better shot stopper. He picked up the balls in the air, and that was the majority of the game. So I couldn't disagree. But I've been there. Last one here from us, and then we'll go into some fan questions that came over Twitter, Reddit, and all over the place. Like I said, you are a very, very popular individual in certain areas, so there are going to be a lot of specific ones there. But we finished up over at Chicago, and then like you mentioned, you went to Indy XI. Really, one of the things I was curious about is I read up that you were director of goalkeeping right towards the end there, while working with Indy XI as well. Is that correct? Yeah. So first of all, what kind of encouraged you to take that role on, and how did you balance all of that, and just where did that all kind of, can you just talk us through that? That's a very interesting and unique thing.
I just finished the year in Chicago. I was on a 2-year deal, but unfortunately, that's when Nelson Rodriguez came in and wanted to change things up again. I had a couple MLS teams interested, but it was one of those, we're interested, but let's talk, in a few weeks, and one of those,
Right.
And at that time also, I don't know, how old am I? 38, 39, somewhere in that ballpark, I think, at that time. And so I always, I've always done youth goalkeeper training and coaching. I've always loved it. I mean, I did it in the early days because, you needed money back in the early days. Yeah. That's how you made extra money, but I've always known I was going to be a coach. I just love the position. I love talking goalkeeping. I love breaking down film, everything about goalkeeping I love. Yep. So you know, it was one of those conversations of like, all right, you know, what are we going to do? Are we going to go to one of these other MLS teams for another year or two? And then out of the blue, a buddy who I played against, it started with a guy named Brad Ring, who played with me in San Jose, or I played with him. He was playing for Indy XI. And so he texted me and said, hey, we've got this crazy idea. Tim Regan, who played in the MLS, is one of the coaches over here. And, you know, they want to kind of throw something out at you. Would you be interested? And I knew from, you know, staying in contact with Brad Ring that Indy XI had a great environment. Like, it was a good place to live, everything. So Timmy Regan calls me. I said, yeah, I'm up for a chat. I'm always up for, you know, a chat and think about things. So Timmy calls me, and you know, at that time they hadn't announced Tim Hankinson, but they were about to shortly. And he's like, hey, Tim Hankinson's going to be the head coach. He wants you. What we want to do is, we know you want to get into coaching, so we're going to make you goalkeeper/goalkeeper director. And, you know, so basically you're the goalkeeper coach for yourself. I said, well, that's good. I can never bench myself. That's pretty cool. So that's kind of the way they worked it out, to get me there. And so it was an interesting 2 years, because we had some good older players on that team, especially that first year when we won the spring season and lost in the final on penalty kicks in the fall. But every morning when I would go in, you know, after I changed, I would go into the coach's office and we'd sit and talk about training. You know, me, Tim, and Tim. And so we go through training, what they needed, how much time I had, all that stuff. So I would kind of prepare my session, and you know, then I had two other goalkeepers there, two young kids. So I would kind of tell them what we're going through, you know, going to get into for the day. And so I started bouncing back and forth. You know, sometimes I was a player, sometimes I was a coach. So it was a little bit of a balancing act that first, you know, half a season to season, just trying to figure out, you know, who am I at this moment? Am I a player? Am I a coach? But it allowed me access not into kind of the daily planning of sessions, but it also, in the off season, it allowed me into meetings with the owner about budgets and player salaries and all that stuff. So it was very educational. It was very educational for me. Second year didn't go as well. And then everything changed after that season. But that's kind of how it started. And at the same time, I was working a little bit with the youth club, Indy Fire, at the same time, which is obviously right there at the same facility. So I was doing a little bit of work with them. A buddy of mine was running the club, and I said, look, I don't want to be out here too many nights right now. I'm still playing, but when I'm done playing, yeah, I'll be out here more. So did that a little bit. And then once that second year was done, you know, got a hold of, you know, and I knew I was that was the end of it. I got a hold of Berhalter one day and just asked him if it was possible if I could retire as a crew player, because it was very special place. It was won my first championship there. And he was all for it, and, you know, went over, signed a 1-day contract, retired as a crew player. So it was very special.
Love that. Yeah, that was one of the questions from a good buddy of ours, also in the podcasting world. He's a big crew guy.
Okay.
MLS Gone Wild is a massive crew guy, and that was one of his questions: is why the 1 day in Columbus? So
he had about 10 questions, I think.
He did. He is he's great.
To be quite honest, like I always felt like Columbus was home. You know, now I played more games and you know, and started more games in San Jose than I did any other club. But for me, it was just Columbus was my first place in the MLS, and it was where I won my first trophy. So for me, that was kind of where it started. I kind of wanted to end, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I get that. I get that completely. Connor's got one more. Sorry, I lied. Connor's got one more.
Yeah, you did. I was just about to call you out for being a liar.
Yeah, I know. I'm the worst. I'm terrible.
Last thing we wanted to talk about was your time at Hibs. I kind of want to let you just kind of guide the conversation a little bit here, but if you could just kind of tell us about how you got there and your experience.
So so Sean Maloney was the manager, and Sean and I played together in Chicago, and we were actually roommates on the road. So we spent a lot of time talking about football. And I could tell right away, like his brain was unbelievable, and I knew he was going to be a good coach. And we really just kind of hit it off. And so he had always told me that if and when he got a head gig, he was going to, ask me to be his goalkeeper coach. So I was always all for it. I didn't think it was going to come when it did, because he was the first assistant for the Belgian national team. And so I thought nothing would happen until after this coming up World Cup. Little did I know, all of a sudden, bam. So that's kind of how it happened. And it happened really quickly, like in January, end of December, January, whatever it was. It was a great opportunity. Loved it. The football's fantastic. The club's great. Unfortunately it didn't last as long as we would have liked, but those things happen. But no, absolutely no complaints whatsoever. Absolutely loved it. Would love to continue in Europe and or the UK. But we'll see what happens. But yeah, absolutely great learning experience for me.
One question we did have on that. Did you happen to be at Hibs the same time that Chris Mueller was there when he made the move over?
Yeah. So Chris got there a few months before, but yes, we were there together. Correct. Yes.
How did he do? Did he fit in well?
When I first got there, he fit in great. When I first got there, he was coming off injuries. So, he was finally healthy, but no, Chris did great over there.
That's awesome. That's so cool.
All right, should we go into the fan questions then?
I did want to ask one question before we got there. I guess I'll count this as my personal fan question.
Okay.
Can you talk to us a little bit about HP goalkeeping? Can you talk to us a little bit about what it is, how it started, and
so started when I was playing in San Jose, through a mutual goalkeeper coach at the time, a guy named Tashak. He was coaching at was he at TFC? I think it was TFC then Vancouver or something like that. But anyway, long story short, he says, "Hey, I got a buddy you need to meet." He's up in Vancouver. He started his own goalkeeping glove company, but doesn't know anything about it. He's actually in tugboats, but he just started it because he got tired of overpaying for gloves for his high school kid. So put me in contact with this gentleman named Rob. Rob and his son Parker flew down to San Jose for a weekend, trained him. We met, we chatted. He had a couple pair of the gloves. I was like, yeah, they're decent. Okay. And I didn't think anything of it. And then a couple weeks later, he calls and I got this great idea. Want you to come in, be a partner with me. You start HPG, in the US, and they had HPG in Canada going, but wasn't doing much because again, he has a real job that makes a lot more money than goalkeeping gloves. So, right. He's like, I want you to design, develop everything, go from there, and I'll just kind of let you do your thing. So that's did that. Started running it, out of San Jose, and took me 4 or 5 months, and we worked on designing the gloves and the pants and the jerseys. And I wanted to get it right, because we weren't going to have a lot of stuff and we're in a big name, so I had a lot of my MLS buddies like training in the off season in the stuff, telling me what they like, what they didn't like, tweaking it. So did that. And then, I don't know how many years into it, but when I was in San Jose, right when I was making when I was in Chicago, right when I was making the transition from Chicago to Indiana, Rob just got so busy in his real job, we were going to shut HPG Canada down anyway. And he just basically was like, look, company's yours. Let's figure it out. I'm out. And it was simple as that. Like, he was a great guy. And next thing you know, I'm running HPG by myself. And so I love it. It gives me another, kind of avenue, dynamic of goalkeeping, something different. I've learned a lot more about gloves than I ever knew. It's also very interesting to see it from the other side because, again, when you're just a goalkeeper, all you do is you text or you call or you email the guy who, sends you gloves and say, hey, I need more gloves. When you're on the business side of it, especially when you're a small glove company, every time, one of the pros texts me and asks for more gloves, like I see dollar bills in my mind. So, right. I'm now a business owner that needs to balance that. Okay, if I send this guy X amount or that lady X amount, like how many extra do I have to sell? So it's all a business now.
Right.
But we've been 10 years, I think, plus 10, maybe longer than that. So I haven't messed it up yet. So we're doing okay, I guess.
That's fantastic. That's so cool. All right. So shall we move into some fan questions? These, I said, we put it out there, and some of them, like I said, some of them were a little crazy. We talked off camera a little bit, but there was a video we couldn't quite make out, but about you with a conversation with a Galaxy striker in the 13 Cali Classico. Somebody was interested about if you fished. There were a few ones there that were like, we're not interested in those, but there are definitely a few here that we'd love to pick your brain on. So I'll let Connor start, and we'll flip flop off of.
Okay.
Sure. So first question here, pretty fun. Did you have a favorite crew teammate?
I mean, I loved all the guys. McBride, Dante Washington, Mike Clark, but my favorite was definitely Brian Mazonoff, 100%.
Gotcha. Most memorable match or moment, either for the crew or just in your overall career?
I mean, obviously, winning the Open Cup was special. That was my first trophy. And then probably starting my first national team game for the full team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say those are probably the top two right there.
Love that.
So this one might be kind of specific, but is there a favorite or most memorable save that you had in your career?
There's one in Chicago. I'm trying to remember who we played. I think Birch hit it. What was Birch? I think he hit it when he was playing for DC. It was a free kick. And it was to my left. And I started going over, and then all of a sudden it tailed back to my right. So I'm here, and then I got to go back here, and I had to move. That was one of the best ones. There was one in San Jose too, when we were playing LA. And gosh, I can't remember who hit it, one of the midfielders, but he hit it from distance. And I think I was 6-7 yards out. And so I'm going back over my left shoulder, and I end up tipping it over. And they get a corner out of it, whatever. And then halftime, as we're walking in, Bex comes over to me and goes, "That was some save." And I remember going like, "Holy crap." Bex just had a good save. Like, I was like, "Holy shit, this is awesome." I was like, hey, thanks, David.
That's so cool.
But then when I saw it back, either that night or the next day, I was like, yeah, that was a good save. So those are the two that kind of come into my mind.
Yeah.
Now it's on Chicago and San Jose subreddits. They got to go find those clips now.
Yeah, they got to go track them down.
Hey, look, when Bex tells you it's a good save, it must have been a good save.
It must have been pretty good. Yeah,
absolutely.
So this one's a specific one, and you're either going to know it right off the bat, or it's going to mean nothing to you.
Okay.
When you would look off to the side in your starting 11 pictures, was there something you were looking at, or was it just off into space?
No.
Just off into space.
No, yeah. I was probably thinking about Chick-fil-A or Dunkin' Donuts. It was my two favorites. No, it was something that it was something that Todd Yeagley and Brian Mazonoff kind of, they must have been doing it at Indiana, I think, was the original. And like I said, Mays, I was like Mays' little brother kind of thing. So one of my first games, he was like, "You gotta look off to the side." And of course I'm like, "Okay, why?" Like, I have no idea, but I'll do it. My older brother told me to do it. So it was kind of their thing. And then like they brought me into it. So once once I started doing it, I just always kind of did it. And it was after after Mays retired and Yeggs retired and, I went to different places. Like for me, it was just kind of respect for those two because they were big in my early days. And so I always wanted to kind of, show them that I thanked them for what they did and bringing me in and putting their arms around me in Chicago or in Columbus.
That's cool. That's really neat.
Honestly.
I've had so many people ask me, what are you looking at? No, I'm just looking over there.
So somebody in the subreddit thought you were looking at a very specific camera person, but it seems that's not the case.
Looking at what? A specific...
like a specific camera person off to the side. Like there was a second shot.
No. I was never looking at anything. Like I said, unless somebody had Chick-fil-A, then maybe I was looking at that. But no,
that's legendary. I love that.
Just randomly looking off to the side because for those two, basically.
That's too good. Okay, someone wanted to know, do you have a least favorite team? And I don't know if you wanted to go, if you wanted to go with a specific one, like let's say 2000 LA Galaxy, or just like an organization in general.
Oh, I gotcha. I guess I would just, I guess I go with LA, when I was in San Jose. It's funny because I would say when I was with Columbus, I would have said Chicago.
Right.
And then most likely when I was Chicago, I may have said Columbus. I can't really say that because I just love Columbus. I love Chicago too, but I really love Columbus. So it's hard.
Right.
But yeah, let's go with LA to be safe.
That'll make sense.
Can you speak to ways that goalkeeper training has evolved over time from when you're coaching now to when you were training yourself?
Yeah. The biggest thing is there's a lot more time spent playing with your feet in training sessions. You're involving, distributions a lot more than we did back in the day. Back in the day, it was, diving and catching crosses and shots and, all that stuff. And now, it's so much more evolved and, you're looking through more traffic and you're dealing with, you're making it more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just dynamic, we'll call it,
well-rounded.
But there's always some sort of distribution, right? Because pretty much every team now plays in some capacity, and that was one of the things Sean was big at. So we had to incorporate a lot of that. And I've done it numerous times with the youth national teams where we incorporate some sort of save or a cross, and now it's some sort of distribution or play out, get it back and switch it. So there's a lot more playing with our feet now in today's world than there was when I grew up.
Nice.
All right, so next one. If you had your pick, if you were in Greg's shoes right now, who would you pick as the starting goalkeeper for this upcoming World Cup for the US?
That's a tough one. I don't know. I've had this discussion a few times with some of my goalkeeping coaching buddies. Matt's done so well, right? So well in every opportunity he got. Unfortunately, Ethan had a little bit of an issue the other night, but I think Ethan's a very good goalkeeper as well. Sean did a great job in his game. Zach's in the past has shown he's Greg's boy, and that's his guy. And there's something to be said for that. I think, for me, I think it's going to come down to who's in form at that moment. Because if you look at every World Cup we've had, in the past, whether it was Casey or Brad or Timmy or that guy, whoever it was always playing consistently, was whoever they were playing for, like they were getting consistent games. And that for me, that's, looking from the outside in, that's my concern is, I hope Zach goes on loan for the first bit of the season, and I hope Matt goes on loan. I don't know if Arsenal wants to loan him out as soon as he gets there, but for those guys, in my opinion, for those guys that have a legitimate chance to be in top form going into that, World Cup in November, they got to be playing, and the same with Ethan. I don't know Nottingham Forest, if, where he's going to end up, in the pecking order, but if he's not playing, if he wants any chance at it, you got to get loaned out. And so it might, again, it might come back down to the very end, and whoever's in the best form, because I think, we have a very good team, we have a very young team, we have a very, very good team, but, in every World Cup we've been successful at, we need a goalkeeper in top form, and it's going to be the same in this World Cup. So it'll be interesting. I don't have an answer for that. I don't, because I mean, again, if one of those, and I'm not taking Sean Johnson out of the mix at all, but right now he's the only one starting consistently. But I think it's either going to be Matt or it's going to be Zach, but I think it's going to depend on if one gets loaned and gets games and one doesn't. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, no, we were talking about that a couple of weeks ago, and that's the exact same thing we said. Is you've got one goalkeeper right now out of your top 5 who's playing every single minute.
Yeah,
and he's barely getting called into camp every once in a while. So, it's going to be a very interesting decision, and one I do not envy Greg for at all, because it's not going to be easy.
No, it's not going to be easy at all.
This one comes from MLS Gone Wild. I spice it up a little bit. You got any examples of a time where you had no communication with somebody? It led to an error, maybe a goal. He wants to know how important the ability to communicate is. But I think that's better off as an example, because I think if you have any, I don't know.
I'm sure there's plenty of them throughout the years. I mean, you got to go back to VHS to find them, but there was one in Hershey, I remember, and I'll tell you the reason why I remember it, but there was one in Hershey. My left back, Brazilian, Z Roberto, very good player. I didn't speak English. So ball, kind of diagonal ball over the top. He was up high. I come flying out. He's running back. Long story short, whole debacle, goal 1-0. I think Z even got a red card on the play or whatever. Halftime comes and Bob's going bananas. Bob threw a metal chair past us and hit the wall with it. I was like, holy crap, that just happened. He was just pissed because of the lack of communication. And right. Gave up a goal. We lost one of our best players and everything. So, again, good old stories you can tell now back in the day, but that's the one that always comes to mind, just because Bob, again, every time Bob and I talk, that seems to somehow come up, so that's the one that always comes to mind. But I'm sure there's plenty in the MLS where it's the old he said, she said, I got it, you got it, no keepers away kind of call.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I like that. I like that story better than the we just didn't talk to each other. This guy threw a chair at me.
All right, so I don't know if I have one more here, unless Andrew wants to add any others.
I got one after. I have 2 after this. One that's here, and one that's my own.
Okay. So, who would you say? This could be a few, or if you have one in particular, was the most dangerous striker that you've gone up against?
Oh, jeez, you can't. I can't name just one. I mean, there were so many of them. Landon, Robbie Keane, Ante Razov, Peter Novak, even though I don't think he was listed as a forward, he was, attacking midfielder. He was the fastest person I've ever seen with the ball at his feet. He was actually faster with the ball than he was without the ball. Echeverry and his free kicks, obviously David Beckham and his free kicks. Wanda was an unbelievable finisher. Thank God, I played with him. McBride was one of the most consistent finishers I've ever seen. Again, thank God I played twice, in Columbus and Chicago with him. Gosh, I'm trying. There's just there was so many. I mean, I'm probably missing 3/4 of the guys I played against that were just such quality. Taylor Twellman, just for Taylor, for me, Taylor was that blue collar worker that was just very opportunistic, and any chance he had a chance to smash me, he would. He got me in a national team camp on just like a little through ball I came out for. Instead of just letting me have it, he decides to like slide through me, and I felt like he tried to break me in half. And I'm like, Taylor, like, it's January, dude. What are we doing here? That was Taylor. That's how he played every day. So again, just Roy Lassiter, again, just names popping back in my head of us. Like, every one of them had a different dynamic as well. What made Robbie Keane so good compared to Landon or compared to, whoever else. Like, just so much talent that I was fortunate or unfortunate maybe sometimes to play against them.
That's crazy. It's kind of crazy going back and just starting naming names like, oh wow, they were all really, really good.
Yeah.
Somebody from the crew wanted to know what it was like to go back to Columbus in the Eastern Conference Final and get kind of heckled by the fans there. You and McBride together.
It was honestly, it was weird. It was weird. I mean, I remember getting heckled the first time I went back. Right, it was a regular season game, pretty early. And some guy, again, I don't know who he was, but some guy was hammering me, and I finally looked at him. I said, I didn't ask to leave. Like, you're hammering me and I didn't ask to leave. Ziggy got rid of me. Like,
he said, like,
do you understand what happened? Because you are slaughtering me right now. I asked to leave. Like, it was crazy. But it was a weird situation. And that game was unbelievable. The Chicago Columbus game that year. And both teams knew whoever won that was going to win the cup.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we knew that was MLS Cup, even though it was the Eastern Conference Final. Like, we knew it. Both teams knew it. It was a great game. Chad Marshall still to this day does not let me live that down every time I talk to him. So, and I really love every year when MLS decides to show that on Twitter and Instagram, because all the kids that I've ever trained, they decide to retweet it to me, or
of course, yeah.
Oh, no.
It's just great. It's lovely. But it was a weird situation to go back. It really was. But
I gotta say, just listen to you hear like all the just casually talking about some of the like people that we grow up like thinking are the coolest. You mentioned Tim Howard, like you call him every week and he's just your guy. Like, Tim Howard's my idol. I
don't talk to Tim, but some of the other guys, again, we're just guys who played football, played soccer together. And, they're all just down to earth guys, and I was the same with Casey, right? I remember my first trip with Casey with the national team. And I remember we went down to Mexico City for a World Cup qualifier, and I sat the bench behind him, and on the plane out of Mexico, I had a few questions for him from the game, from things I observed, and I wanted to talk to him. And I remembered saying to him, hey, do you mind? Is it okay if I sit down? And he was like, dude, sit down, let's talk. Like, he was just so, he was so down to earth and so cool. And I was like, well, you're the guy I kind of look up to, but
yes,
we're just all kind of, look, we're playing a game we love. And at the end of the day, it's a game, and so it doesn't matter where you're playing or at what level, like, show respect to everybody, and we all love the game for the same reasons. Again, it doesn't matter if you're making a lot of money or not a lot of money, it's not important. So,
right. Yeah. My last question stems off of that. You got any really cool jersey swaps or something? Because I know the field players do a lot. You keepers do jersey swaps often. Did you get a get a few kits?
Sometimes. I mean, I've got, I've in storage. I've got a lot of jerseys over the years. I wasn't at first. I wasn't huge on it. But again, as you get older and you realize things, I got a lot of the older guys that I really respect. Again, Casey's, Troy Perkins was a good friend of mine, so I got his, Matt Reese, Onstead, Scotty Garlicks. I got guys who there was some sort of connection to.
Sure. Yeah.
The big thing for me is I like collecting gloves, different people's gloves.
Nice.
So again, something a little bit different. And again, I got them all in storage, but like I've got Carlo Cudicini's gloves. I've got Sar's gloves. I got a pair of Shea Gibbons gloves. That was the thing for me, is I like to get their gloves. I like to get them signed. And, so that was kind of my little thing. More than I have a lot of jerseys, but more than jerseys, it was getting gloves.
That's super unique and super cool. That's that's a nice little, like, again, unique, right? It's everybody's trading kits. Hey, let me just grab your gloves real quick, and because that's a lot easier to trade too. You can get 7 pairs just sent right to you.
Oh yeah.
That's super cool. I could continue to talk for the next 7 hours. Connor knows that, but I know that we all have other places to be. But Connor, you got anything else you want to ask?
No, that's a great way to end it off, I think.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. This, again, I'm going to restrain myself because I can ask 1.5 million questions, but Bushy, thank you so much for being here. I was telling Connor when you agreed to come on, like how excited I was. Cause like I mentioned, I watched you growing up, and like I said, I wasn't kidding when I said watching you made me want to continue to play. So thank you so much for sitting down and chatting with us. It's been an absolute honor.
No, thanks for having me, guys. This has been a blast. So
yeah, this was a lot of fun.
Love it. Like I said, I love talking goalkeeping. So anytime you guys want me back, I'll be back.
Man, we will take you up on that. Yeah. As long as you don't block us on social media, we'll take you up.
No. I'll retweet any picture. Put a picture out tonight. It's getting retweeted.
I love it. Yeah. So we'll sign up there. Before we do that, we wanted to. We always give our guests, a 3-minute slot to plug anything that they're doing, whether it be HB goalkeeping, your social accounts. So throw it out there so people can find you.
You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at HPG_GK. That's my glove company. And that's it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, that's good. Everybody go give him a follow. He's got, like I said, I love scrolling through some of your Instagram stories and just kind of flipping through all the stuff you're sharing. It's great. It's just
usually it's goalkeeping, videos that I see, or about the gloves that we have. Mm-hmm. Every now and again, now that especially right now that I'm visiting my mom, you might get where mom and I went to lunch, or the other day I decided to take a walk and I found a couple of horses at a farm, so I just decided to put that out there. So there might be a random, like, what the hell is this, but there's a reason why it's on there. But it is what it is.
Yeah, and then again, for me, like I said, all the goalkeeping stuff for me is just like, that's what I would have at 17 would have been looking for at any social media, would have been training drills or gloves or anything like that. So I hope the people who are listening will go ahead and follow you, so you can share that with them. Again, I'm a little bit past my time, but I know a bunch of kids that I were training back home that would very much benefit from that. So everybody make sure to give them a follow. If you want to follow us, so when we post our clips and stuff, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, just search the Designated Players Podcast. You will find us. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts, when this episode and all other episodes go live. And until then, we will see you on the next episode of the Designated Players Podcast. See ya.